Welcome to the City of Madeira Beach Board of Commissioners Workshop Meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 22nd, and the time is 2:08 p.m. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Here.
Commissioner Lister?
Here.
Commissioner Poe?
Here.
Commissioner Schantz? Here. Mayor Palladino?
Here. And first of all, I'd like to welcome Mr. Gonzalez. Welcome, sir. It's been a while since we've seen you, but glad you could join us this afternoon. And starting out with item A, discussion on city employee buyout. Mr. City Manager, would you like to open or have Mr. Gonzalez open?
Let me open it up, and then we'll hand it off to Mr. Gonzalez. You're right. He hasn't. You haven't seen him in a while.
That's a good thing.
It's nice. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's what my wife told me. It's a good thing you don't see Tom.
So it's nice to have him here. I had consulted with Tom early on in regards to this buyout, and I think you've all had private conversations with me in regards to this, and we thought it was a good idea for a number of reasons. And you know, the press, I thought, grabbed hold of the fact that we were trying to get rid of the disgruntled employee, and every organization has disgruntled employees. That wasn't the impetus behind this. I think we have a couple of employees that might have been, you know, trapped is probably the wrong word, but for one reason or another could use this help. And in an organization as small as we are, I think, you know, changing of the guard and maybe a little new blood every once in a while is okay. But if you're coming to work because you have to, because you're stuck, because, you maybe want to move, or you're going to get married, but you can't go find another job, whatever the case may be, you don't put into it, I think, what we might be looking for. The other thing is that at least, and I don't want to take credit for it, but since I got here, we've changed a lot. God, how many positions did we do away with in the last 3 years? We're probably 15 positions down. So you might have been working here doing X, and that's either increased or changed dramatically. And some people don't like change, and that wasn't what I was hired to do. And for one reason or another, I don't like Crawford, or I don't like my new supervisor. Maybe I don't like my new job. Whatever the case may be, I thought that a simple buyout offer, a one-time thing, would be a good idea. We had 4 employees express interest in the buyout. And subsequent to that, we've actually heard that there might be other employees, and that's a decision that you'll have to make, whether or not you want to reopen this and see if anyone else is interested. I would suggest a very, very short time frame if anyone else is interested, because they've had just as much time as anyone else to consider it. But that's why Tom is here today, and if you heard some of the scuttlebutt around town or in the coffee shop or whatever, you know, one is Crawford's, you know, creating this kingdom. I told the employees, I met with them one-on-one, no one has to take this. No one is being forced out, and frankly, when we did get rid of 14 or 15 positions 2 years ago, that's when we would have handled this, if we didn't want you included in the organization. Everyone that's currently working here has the right to retire here, to, you know, do whatever they want to do as long as they continue to produce for us. So I started with Tom, and we put together an idea of a 6-month buyout. And I might be using the wrong verbiage, and the attorney here might be telling me to stop calling it a buyout, but basically employees can pick from a certain date until the first payroll in October a time to leave, and they'll be paid for 6 months after that. The reason that this is cost neutral is when I approached the department heads, I said, you know, this is an idea. If you're in favor of it, I need to know from you that you'll keep the position open during those 6 months, except for positions that are somewhat critical. Like, for instance, Dave Marsicano identified the fact that if a driver in the sanitation department would leave, I got to fill that position right away, Shane, or I've got no one in the truck. I understand that. But if there were any positions that they could keep open, they would do that. So for one way, shape, or form, we're gonna make this a cost neutral thing. So this isn't going to cost the taxpayers any additional dollars. In fact, once this happens, we may reorganize again. We may even find a position or two that we can do without, and there might be some cost savings there. So the purpose of today is twofold. One is, again, there's been some, I haven't been approached personally, but some of my department heads have, in regards to employees above and beyond the 4 that indicated they were interested after the deadline, saying, now that I know this is kind of for real and there's going to be no repercussions, and you know, we still have some skittish employees from what happened back in the day, and I understand that. if you want to extend this and see if anyone else is interested. But then B, Mr. Gonzalez here, Attorney Gonzalez, is going to walk you through the mechanics of the contract, and then he's actually going to meet with at least 3 of the 4, there's a gentleman that's out ill today, the 4 affected employees, and personally explain the contract to them. It's not going to be a hard sell. They don't have to sign today, but we'll approve these contracts probably in the next couple of weeks. So they can take some time, go home. Maybe they want to discuss it with their personal attorney or, you know, if their spouse or their kids or whatever they want to do. But that's really why Tom's here today. There was some scuttlebutt about whether or not the 6 months was legal. Tom will talk about that. But everything that we're doing here is permissible. We're not breaking any rules. And, of course, you know, I checked all that out before we even moved forward with this. So with that, I'll hand it off to this young man, and he can walk you through it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Very briefly, what we are talking about is actually a reduction in force or a buyout or whatever name is going to be put to it for purposes of discussing some of the concerns that I've read about that have been expressed. What's important is what it is not. And what it is not is it is not a severance pay plan. And the reason that's important is the legislature a couple of years back passed a statute. The number of the statute is 215.425. And what that statute was passed in response to was a few situations, one of which occurred in Hillsborough County. And it was very much on the minds of the legislature and very much spoken about when they enacted this law. And what happened in those 3 situations was that there was a county administrator in Hillsborough, for instance, and a county attorney who were terminated, but who had contracts that provided that they would get pretty significant payouts, notwithstanding the fact that they were terminated. And the legislature was out to prevent that situation being severance pay. Number one, severance pay is a term of art. Severance pay is something that's paid to someone when they are let go by action of the employer. In other words, you don't get severance pay when you resign. You get severance pay when you're let go by the employer. And what was specifically dealt with in this statute was severance pay, meaning that you could not have a contract that provided for severance pay that was in an amount that came to more than 20 weeks of your normal pay. And the purpose for that, again, was to prevent these contracts where somebody could be fired even for a failure to perform or for other bad reason, and they would still get paid money for the privilege of having been fired by the public employer. There's nothing in the law that prevented contracts so that you could still have a contract for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. The contract could still be no cut so that an employee would have a right to have that employment. The employee would have a right to sue on that contract. The only thing that was talked about was this specific idea that you couldn't have severance pay. And so in the context of what the city manager has been describing to me, which is that employees who were one of a group who were given the opportunity to take advantage of this, there was nothing suggesting that they'd be fired, so there was no dispute with them with respect to any kind of settlement of a claim where they would be getting paid any more money because of any claim they were making. They would give up all the rights they had under civil service to continuing employment, to anything else that they had down the road, to staying employed by the city, and they would thereby reduce the census and the particular group of employees who were employed by Madeira Beach. The contract would look like a very simple resignation as of a date certain, with an irrevocable aspect to the date where once you signed it and accepted the benefits, you wouldn't be entitled to withdraw from that. You would give up all your rights to employment, to reemployment, all the rights you had under civil service, and you sign a general release, which is standard for any kind of buyout or reduction in force. And the standard release would basically say that you were giving up all the claims you had or may have had against the city of Madeira Beach up to the point of your resignation, and that would conclude the agreement. It would basically be done upon the payment and the execution of that. No part of the payments, as I understand it and as they would be designed, no part of the payment is for services already rendered. No part of the payment is because there's an employment dispute involving the past employment, and it is what it is, which is a device by which the city is offering this opportunity to those persons who want to take it, and in return is getting a release of that potential claims that they may have down the road, and the elimination of these positions and/or these people. And that's essentially it in a nutshell, unless there's any questions that you all may have.
Does any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Gonzalez?
No.
Mr. City Manager, is that your complete understanding with Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I we've discussed this at length, probably exhaustingly on his end, so I can understand it at least, over the last couple of weeks. So that's exactly how we would do it. The timeline of events then, and I think where your call needs to come into play here is whether or not you want to extend this and offer it again, essentially to the employees, till maybe the end of the week. And again, I think it's fair to say that there were some employees that were, well, we know they were afraid that if they came out and said, I'm interested in a buyout, that they would be the first ones red circled or walk to the door in a future budget or something like that. And that's realistic. I mean, call it what it is. It kind of happened before, and it happens in cities all over the place. So I understand their concern in that regard, and so I think some of the employees were somewhat shy. Do I want, the paper asked, well, Shane, what are you going to do when 65 people retire? 65 people are not going to trade in 6 months of pay for their incredibly wonderful city job. That's not going to happen. I would suspect we might get 2 more, maybe 3 more. And if you want to do that, that's fine. Vince and I had ordered a deadline of whatever it was, probably a week ago last Friday. But people have emerged, and if you want to extend that's your prerogative. If you're going to ask staff, do we have a problem with that? No, but I'm going to hold those department heads to the same letter of the law. I think I'll have to make an administrative determination whether or not that position needs to be filled immediately, or the department head can wait those 6 months. But we all know that there are, I don't want to say not everyone's job is essential, but I can think of one right now where if we had 2 of the parking people go, we need somebody servicing the parking meters, especially, we're doing pretty well in that department, right? So if we would have something like that happen, we'd maybe have to fill that, or, I'm trying to think of another one, but Dave's example of a sanitation truck driver, we probably have to fill that one right away. But we'll make it work within the budget, and that's the key, that this doesn't cost the taxpayers an additional dime. That's not what the intent was. This was supposed to be a service for employees that for one reason or another, happy or sad or upset, just maybe it's time to move on and find something different. So if you're comfortable with that, I think that's the first determination, if you want to extend that deadline a little bit. And then secondly, the attorneys here, I believe most of the affected employees are the ones that initially volunteered, are in the audience. I think they have some questions for him after this meeting, or right after this. Tom can frankly exit and meet with them. And then you'll execute contracts, if not sooner than August 12th at your BOC meeting. By then, what I would ask is that the attorney have the contract drafted and it's signed on behalf of the employee. So as of October 12th, they can sign on, and frankly, they can leave then any time between then and the first full pay period in October. If they want to leave immediately, they can. If they want to wait it out, they can, but when the fiscal calendar flips in October, they would be asked to end their employment by then.
All right, Mr. City Manager, like I said, my only concerns was it being cost effective. You are the manager, the employees work for you, and I get where we're going at with this. My second concern, and I'm very happy with, is Mr. Gonzalez's opinion. So I don't know where the rest of the commission is.
I'd like to ask a question. How does this affect their personnel file? I mean, say they go somewhere else to work and they
Sure.
call in here, and we want to look in their personnel file. I don't want them to have any kind of a
No,
black mark or anything against them because they took this opportunity to change their lifestyle or
Sure.
whatever they're.
I understand, and usually a release and resignation means there was something going on there. So I defer to the attorney here. I can tell you that of the 4 employees that initially, notified us, I'd have no problem writing them letters of recommendation for them, regardless of whether or not they were taking this buyout or not. So I'll be happy to issue those, and if it needs to become part of the agreement, that's fine, but that's probably a question for Tom in regards to, is that the last thing on the file, and that's the first thing you see when you open it up is, employee X, a release and resignation agreement. So Tom, I don't know if there's something we can do that shows that the employee was in good standing and that they just took an offer. I mean, this is not, the other thing I wanted to say is, I didn't reinvent the wheel here, folks. This happens all the time. I polled a bunch of the cities. There has been buyouts in this area quite a bit. So they're always structured a little bit differently. But I'm sure that that's been a concern, and I don't know, Tom, if there's something that we can do to show that they were in good standing if they agree to it or not.
Well, I think the best way to handle that, and the traditional way to handle that, is to have something that is typed up to go in the personnel file. Simply explains what the transaction was. I mean, the transaction itself is going to read as nothing but a resignation, without anything in there and without any kind of accusatory documentation or any statement of dissatisfaction. And the only thing after that would be to have some paragraph that describes the program and the fact that this was voluntarily taken. And we can even write that into the release in terms of what it is in fact being done.
Does that satisfy your question, Commissioner Schultz?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other commissioner have any questions for Mr. Gonzalez?
So the mayor will have the attorney draft the contract. He's going to meet with the employees right now on a one-on-one basis. Maybe Cheryl, you can go ahead and use my office and take them back one by one, unless they should probably just go one at a time.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Gonzalez,
Tom.
thank you, sir.
And then we'll invite Mr. Gonzalez back for the Board of Commissioner approval and those contracts. What do you, and again, this is your prerogative, do you want to extend it? It's a slippery slope. We set a deadline. But again, considering, some of what had happened in the past and their concerns, I understand them. So that's really, unfortunately, your call.
What is your recommendation, Mr. Stevens?
Wow,
Before I ask
that's a
poll
good
the
question,
commission.
Mr. Mayor. I don't think there's anything unfair by extending it if you extend it to everyone. And I think you show your employees that times have changed and that they have nothing to worry about. If you want to stay here, we are happy to have you. That's the message that we're going to send. Oh, we didn't get the 3 employees we wanted. That's not it. The 4 that are leaving, none of us want them to leave. That's not the case. So, it's going to be interpreted 2 different ways. The people that, understand how this is working will be supportive, and our usual critics will be critical of it. But we have some deserving employees, and if they were a little bit camera shy, I understand that. But if you want to take advantage of a heck of a deal, you should have maybe taken advantage of it by the deadline. So it's a double-edged sword. So.
I think it's more than what you said a little while ago. The conversation was they hadn't heard of this, so they want to wait and see what is it.
Right.
And I think you're probably correct in saying that. So I find no fault whatsoever in extending it till Friday, as you mentioned myself.
I'm leaning towards not opening it back up, only because, I think it should have been taken advantage of in the beginning. But if we do open it back up, can we open it back up with a slightly less buyout? Is that going to be a bigger deal for the attorney to have to go through?
I think it's a bigger
Can we
deal,
go-
and, I just asked the labor attorney to leave the room, but
Because I don't think it's about the money.
it's not.
Well, I hope it's not about the money. That's my problem. And if it's about the money, and you lower the money, then some people won't take it. So I'm trying to weed out the people that.
No, the only thing that you can say is, and I've got enough experience in this from my days of being a personnel director, is that when you offer a deal, I offer those 3 a deal right now, and it's $10 to leave the room.
Right.
And now I'm going to give them the same deal, but me and 2 other ladies and a 70-year-old man are over here. You run into age discrimination and all those things that you want to keep the deal consistent, I think, just to avoid any type
Don't you,
of
according to
suit.
law, don't you have to do that? You have to treat all employees the same.
Well, in essence, I think this is the same deal, and just because we're extending the deadline on the same deal. So I couldn't extend the deadline on this deal to just department heads. I think you offer it to your entire payroll again if you want to do that. Remember the intent for the buyout. The buyout was, if you're not happy here, or you'd be happier someplace else, we want to help you. And so if we've got people coming to us saying, I was a little camera shy and I apologize, but I might be interested in that. The intent is still there, the basis of why we issued this is still there. And so Mayor, if you're asking me, I don't necessarily like it, but for the betterment of the employees, and these are some employees that have worked their tail off in the last 3 years, I kind of gotta back them on this, and I'd certainly recommend extending it. An absolute deadline, a Friday. Vince can issue a note today that says if you want to talk or whatever, but by 3:30 on Friday afternoon, you have to let us know. Like I said, initially we had 4 people. We might get 1 or 2 others that were just maybe a little shy or scared, and that's justifiable.
It's your pleasure.
Can't take a vote on it, Mr. Mayor, but
I
if
know
we
we can get a consensus.
Yep.
In a way, I kind of feel like Terry does, and in a way, I feel like Pat does. So I'm kind of conflicted on the whole thing. I think if I was offered a buyout, I'd probably say, yes, I'll take my buyout, because I know I've got limited to where I can go here. But to come back later and want to do it, and I understand what you're saying, is they're used to living in the past, but
That's the key. I think
Yes.
they came to me, frankly. I met with every employee that wanted to show up, and they said, yeah, great, you're going to ask us to volunteer for a buyout, and then when you have to cut, I'm the first one to go because I don't want to be here. I get that, and that's probably how we did some things back in the day when we lost some employees, regardless of who was involved or if it was right or wrong. So I understand that, and they lived through that, and I don't get an opportunity to go to bat for my employees very often, and this is one of those times. And so to just blanket it across them one more time, I know we had a very conflicted sanitation driver that just couldn't make the decision, and maybe a little bit more time or maybe some advice from a financial advisor or something like that maybe pushed him one way or the other. It's a guy we wouldn't want to lose, but if we can help him, I think we should. So this is my chance to go to bat for him. So if it pleases the commission, I certainly would burn some political capital with y'all and say I'd appreciate your endorsement on this one. And let's just extend it to about Friday afternoon, 3:30, and I can let you know how many others we get interested. Again, I'm expecting it to be 2 tops.
Board City Manager.
yes, absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Next, item B, discussion on fiscal year 2015 proposed budget. Mr. City Manager, is there any updates?
None, Mr. Mayor. Your finance director is here to answer any and all questions. I'm here as well. I put that on there for your sake. If there's members of the public that have anything that they'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, that's your prerogative. But I just wanted to allow you one more chance to, bring anything up. Maybe you saw something after the last meeting. We had an outpouring of support at our last meeting, which was a real feel-good situation for us and the community. And I think it certainly showed that, what we're doing out there is falling on favorable eyes, so to speak. So with that, there doesn't have to be any conversation. We just put it out there in case you guys had something to ask us.
Does the commission have any questions or comments?
No,
Conversation for Finance Director to City Manager. Mr. Lewis? It was a 50-50 chance. You were a
Pardon?
guy. I had a 50-50 chance you were a guy, that's what I just said.
No bets. Dick Lewis, 561 Crystal Drive. Thanks for the opportunity to comment on the budget today. I'll take advantage of that. I think it's an excellent budget and represents a lot of work, so I'm very happy with it, but I'll offer a few minor comments. I'm sure Mr. Crawford has forgotten, but during the review of the last budget, I suggested he include an organizational chart which would be of benefit to the citizens in not only reviewing the departments and relationships and the budget, but also have something similar posted on bulletin boards, which would be useful to citizens on a continuing basis. That hasn't been done. I still think it's a good idea, so I would like to offer that again. On another minor matter, mostly editing, the city portion of support for the Gulf Beaches Public Library is categorized as a donation. It's not a donation in the usual sense, so I suggest that you might independently categorize that, just leave it out of donations and indicate it as Gulf Beaches Public Library, because saying donations can in fact give the wrong impression about the use of that money. And finally, I want to repeat one I know you're tired of hearing. As in past years, recently, we have continuing the $1,700 donation to the Seniors Club. In consideration of the amounts and the balance of the budget, this is truly a very paltry amount, probably prorated to the citizens and businesses of Madeira Beach. It maybe represents 25 cents. But the fact is, in terms of the likely socioeconomic membership of this organization, they're probably the least needy organization in the country. And this is not a government purpose. What happens when you donate taxpayer money is that the five of you decide how I want my charitable funds to be expended, and it's simply not a government purpose, and I continue to advise you I don't think it's correct. But that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Shane, I thought you made charts. I seen in my budget book.
You do, and Mr. Lewis, you just don't have the benefit of the commission. We just added 2 personnel for the purpose of the rec center, so the document that I have created is now being edited, but it'll be the first page of the official budget that goes up. The hierarchy chart, that your first point. So, yep, we have one, and in fact, if we can give you one, but it's not correct anymore because we've changed some things around, but the correct one will be in the final version of the budget.
Yeah, it's very nice, too. You did a great job on that.
Anyone else? No? Once again, Mr. City Manager, Vince, Dave, and to your department heads, it's an outstanding budget, and gentlemen, thank you very much, and to the commission, thank you very much for your comments and opinions of the budget. Next, discussion on specs for dock at Marina. Mr. City Manager, you want to open up?
Yeah, can
or
I,
Mr. Muscat?
can I start, and then I'll hand it over to Dave for
Okay.
the real technical part of it. You have the RFP in front of you, and that's going to serve as your spec sheet for today. And this handles BDOC. The specs are in there on page 1. Dave can walk you through that. Before we get too deep into it, though, what we need to do is change a spec on the fuel dock. And you had originally approved a fuel dock spec for an all-green type, basically plastic dock. And the more that we've worked with the people involved in that, the more that we've learned that that's not going to serve us well in this situation. So we're asking for you to approve a spec that specs an aluminum floating dock for our fuel dock. And Dave and Vince and I are currently working on whether or not we will have to bid that, or if we can piggyback off of a local municipality that's already bid that out. And when we do that, you need to remember that if a city's already bid it out, chances are that that's the bid that we would receive. And so that saves us time and frankly money if we can piggyback off of another contract. So we'll work with you on that. So Mr. Mayor, separately, and Madam Clerk, if you can make sure that this makes the minutes specifically, we need a change in spec from a composite plastic fuel dock to that, a floating dock, to that of an aluminum, Dave, fill in the blank, aluminum floating dock.
So you just need a consensus on that.
Just a consensus, and this is just the spec approval. When we start spending money, it'll obviously have to come back to you for approval regardless.
Commission?
No
That'd be
problems.
fine.
I have no problem with that.
All right, so that was part A of our problem. Now I'll hand it off to Dave because he can walk you through the BDOC replacement project, and then when you approve this spec, we'll be back to you either with a bid award as the result of an RFP, or frankly, a contract award, because we'll be spending obviously more than $15,000.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. The project description is, this will be a new fixed dock in the exact footprint that it sits in now, which is BDOC. All of you are aware, I'm sure, since 2007, we've been under a moratorium in our part of the county for any new commercial dock development. So unless it's transient, sometimes we can get it through. This BDOC configuration will be the same configuration it's in now. It will include transient dockage on the east side of the dock. The west side of the dock will now hold 7 lifts, I'm sorry, 1 lift on the east side. The dock will be constructed with wood stringers and wood pilings with AZEC or Trek Transcend for decking. That's the newest recycled decking we have out there. All the electrical service will be upgraded, fire service will be upgraded to the dock. The electrical, one of the biggest parts, we are requiring a $2 million blanket liability protection for our electrical contractors who bid this job, because of electric is what burns down your dock 90% of the time. So we want them to have the proper insurances. That is basically the project in a nutshell. We're replacing it as it is.
And it's permitted.
And it's permitted, yes. This is, anything else is probably 2 years and very expensive to permit. We were able to push this all through, and it's ready to go.
The money's in the budget. There's is partially funded by a grant.
Grant, yes.
And just so I'm clear, and I think I probably just confused myself, this part, this project itself will get bid out in its entirety. When I said maybe we can piggyback off of another contract, that's just for the small fuel dock. But this
Right.
is a relatively sizable project with a lot of different trades involved, so that'll be bid out in its entirety. And the fuel dock might get bid out unless we can use a piggyback clause in a contract. So today, all you're doing is approving the spec. What this does then is it goes out on the streets and we'll get bids. You'll approve the bid, you'll approve the contract, and you'll approve the amount when it all comes.
And we'll be buying that fuel dock direct also, along with the other materials to build these docks to save.
Yeah, whenever we can buy direct to save on the tax savings and that type of thing, we do it.
So Dave, all that's gonna be gone now, where when you pull up there, you gotta step up and then step up again, it's all gonna be working.
All
off the
that is
floor of
gonna
the
be
platform.
gone.
So you've created actually, it's gonna be a lot safer using it for the public.
It's going to be much safer. Instead of 73 foot long, we're going to have, it'll be 134 feet. It's going to add to the boat traffic. We have the boat traffic now stacked up waiting on the weekends. This will allow us to push the boats in and out a lot faster, and much easier for our clients to use coming in and out.
And no, absolutely, because I know if I'm sitting in there with my 45-footer and you have another 33-footer, I've been there on a Thursday afternoon and there's still a few other 30-footers sitting out there waiting to come in, so actually, it's a great idea.
And this is where you get your additional lifts too. If you didn't notice, there's 8 lifts in conjunction with the couple that we've got out there now. So those are, I was out at the marina by mistake one day, and a lift became available, and it was rented within 20 minutes. I mean, there's a market, there's an economic demand for those. So I think we're going to fare very well on that. Really get some revenue getting produced in that marina.
So that's 8 total, not 10 total?
And
It'll be 10 total. We already have 2 in.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And of
Dave,
course,
how do
we-
they do that? Tell me, I don't understand how they're gonna put all these lifts. Is each one gonna have an individual slot?
Each one goes into a slip.
So
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
got its own slip?
Mhm.
And the next guy, okay. So
Correct.
when
Yep,
they
on
drive
down.
in there, up goes their boat.
Yep.
The lift, is there those big canvas things that they drive into?
That they drive
Is that the
into,
kind of lift you're
yeah.
gonna have?
And they'll range from 13,000 to 30,000 pound lifts. And they're already all rented.
Already gone?
Gone.
rented.
Matter of fact, arguing over.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Time to raise the price.
supply and demand.
85%.
And
We're
that
using-
will bring your fuel dock, the commercial docks behind the ship store and B dock will all be brand new. So we'll still have some work to do on A dock left and look for us to come down the road to do that. We'll obviously try to go after some grant dollars before we start that project.
Do you have any idea how long aluminum docks will last? I mean, I know the reason we don't, saltwater kills them.
Saltwater does kill them. I've installed, 22 years ago, installed these same docks at Tampa Yacht and Country Club, still there today, doing great. My favorite example that has been run over, beat, driven as hard as you can drive them, the floating dock at McDonald's. It's been there as long as I can remember. And same company, Gator Dock. They didn't start doing this last week or yesterday. It's
Doesn't McDonald's have aluminum top?
Yep, so will ours.
Oh, we are?
All aluminum,
Not the tracks. Okay.
not the tracks on the fuel dock.
I got you.
We can do it either way, but
Yeah, aluminum's fine.
that's a perfect example. They really, they stand up. We are a clean marina. We do not spill fuel, and monitor people fueling, but you're gonna have a little bit spit out every now and again. All of us put fuel in the boat, know that. So this aluminum really holds up. I can't say enough about them. I think we'll have many years of use out of these docks.
You don't have to worry about the worms with the aluminum.
No, they stand strong, so.
I know that worries the city manager.
Yeah, I'm very confident in this product.
But I
Do
think
you have a
we've got to
completion date, of course?
No, sir. I'd like to give that to you at a later date.
I think we did put a
there's a
completion
letter.
date in here of
There's a date.
January or February of next year, February,
For
end of
BDOT.
February,
It's always good.
for BDOT.
I saw that.
Mr. Mayor, we just need a consensus on the spec
Consensus.
approval.
I think we got a consensus
Yep.
for the
Yes.
city manager.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 2:45.